Luffy's luck points are absolutely maxed out. However, that did not stop him from getting clapped not once, not twice, but 21 times in his entire journey, and we are here to revisit those scars, starting with his almost successful execution at the hands of Buggy at Logtown. Some people think that Luffy was just playing around with Buggy. When he captured him at the same spot, Roger was executed 24 years ago. Maybe Roger's ghost was pulling Luffy into the afterlife, to play of course. But it was most probably Oda adding a twist to hook the viewers in the infancy of the series. In any case, that's cheek clap number uno. During the same arc, heck, the very next episode, Luffy is captured yet again by Captain Smoker with the help of his Logia and Baton. He barely makes it when Dragon finally arrives with the milk from the convenience store 17 years later. And let me tell you, Luffy was absolutely done in this scene, because when it comes to Smoker and his haul, he doesn't mess around. Get it? The joke from the live action? Oh man, what do we even try? The next two cheap clapping bonanzas come at the hands of Crocodile at Alabasta. In the very first fight between the two, Luffy, standing very good on his Brazilian heritage, displays his insane capoeira skills, but he's not in the just use Haki Bro club yet. So he's met with one of the most used anime tropes in history, the impaling to certain death, only to not die and return back to fight yet again. It's cheesy, but we like Luffy so it's okay. However, the next time they clash at Cobra's castle, Luffy has learned, and we see one of his most badass forms yet. Yep, I'm talking about Mizu Luffy. I mean, just look at those arms and that belly. That's a physique crafted just to fight. Okay, jokes apart, Luffy was able to achieve his hidden objective in this fight, which was to figure out how to actually defeat Crocodile while sustaining his water intake. So, I guess this wasn't such a big loss after all. The next defeat is almost a temporary setback in One Piece terms due to Luffy being the tryhard that he is, but we'll count it nonetheless. And that is his fight against God Enel in Skypia. Right as Enel realizes that Luffy is his natural enemy due to being made out of rubber and phasing through all of his attacks, Enel just decides to chain Luffy to a huge golden ball and throw him off the arc, presumably to his death. But that doesn't last for long, just a few episodes if I remember correctly. Now we all know Luffy wouldn't sit quiet after one defeat now, would he? And as we all rightly suspect even before we enter the Water 7 arc, Luffy runs right into an opponent he can defeat. He breaks into the Galila headquarters along with the other Straw Hats, only to be pinned to the ground by Rob Lucci. Well, he did get out of there, but the humiliation didn't end, as he was now confronted by CP9 along with Zoro, Nami and Chopper, and still got his ass handed to him in a platter, which led to one of the funniest scenes in One Piece with him and Zoro being stuck on rooftops. And I just remembered that Luffy was stuck even before the fight started, but that gag is used just to keep Luffy out of the fight quite often. The next three defeats come simultaneously when Luffy gives us one of the most satisfying moments in anime history by punching the regality out of Saint Charlos. Oh boy, gonna rewatch it. But as soon as it happens, Kizaru, Sentomaru and a number of pacifistas are deployed in Sabaody to deal with the Straw Hats and the Worst Generation. Honestly, I think the Worst Generation was named as such cause how bad they sucked in the first part, no offense. Anyways, moving forward, as the Straw Hats barely defeat the first pacifista, Sentomaru appears with another, making the Straw Hats retreat. This is where they get cornered by Sentomaru for the first time, which ends up in a technical defeat for Luffy. Before Kizaru finally arrives at the scene after defeating Basil Hawkins, Urouge, X-Drake and Scratchman Apu. Now as soon as Kizaru arrives, he takes Zoro hostage while Usopp and Brook try their best with all their attacks passing through him. Now given they were already tired due to the fight earlier, but still, the power difference between them and Kizaru was so staggering that his mere arrival resulted in their defeats up until it really evened it out. And finally, Real Kuma arrives and sends the whole crew flying to different islands, resulting in one of the biggest defeats in Luffy's pirating career, something that kinda turns into a massive plus later on in the series. But is Luffy done taking L's? Heck, the whole video is about it, so it can't be stopping now. You know those moments in video games where a strong character is introduced very early and you're supposed to lose to him or her? That character was Magellan in One Piece Impel Down Saga. At that time, there was no way for Luffy to even hold a candle to Magellan. And hell, even a post-time skip Luffy would struggle against him cause the duel literally ended two future Yonkos within minutes of each other. After getting poisoned by Magellan, Luffy was dragged by Bon Clay to Ivankov to get him healed, which makes the defeat even more stingy. Now after all these events, Luffy technically took another L, but kinda got saved by Jinbei. You see, when Luffy and the others are in between their escape from Impel Down, they come across Blackbeard who taunts Ace, enraging Luffy. Now Luffy does land the first hit overwhelming Teach with his speed, but he gets caught the second time and is thrown back like a wet rat. Honestly, that would have been more serious if Luffy had stayed to fight and not listened to Jinbei, since Magellan would have got the chance to finish them all. And honestly, the thrill had had just begun as a first-time watcher. We couldn't even imagine what Marineford had in store for us. The first Yonko fight, the arrival of Shanks, the introduction of Luffy's Conqueror's Haki, Luffy taking another L, etc, etc. And staying true to his increasing L-taking capabilities, Luffy took his biggest loss yet by getting almost impaled by Akaino's lava fist along with Jinbei, just minutes after losing Ace to the same move. Also, no hate to Ace, my boy still lives in our hearts. And speaking of hearts, the next person who took Luffy down had none of it. And that person is Hody Jones. Now see, here the technicality kinda favors Luffy, cause you know, Luffy didn't actually get defeated like in other bouts, but rather he was exposed to seawater and took a temporary L. So there's that. But the next fight when looking back is just a big letdown. We see Zoro urging Luffy to take their fight seriously, and it was kinda hypocritical cause he didn't even take his own fight against the Yeti Cool Brother seriously. Anyways, you might have realized that the person we're talking about is Caesar Clown, and Luffy was taken by surprise when Caesar sucked the air out using his gas food, asphyxiating him. Now the next fight was a serious one. Luffy against Doflamingo was a once in a lifetime event to witness. I mean, before the badass scene where Luffy stops Doffy from stomping on Law and the Conqueror's battle that took place right after, Luffy was struggling. Mainly because he wanted to save Bellamy, but also because he was testing Doffy's strength before he unleashes his trump card, Pound Man. So yeah, partial L. And sometimes even after being strong, it's situation that makes you lose a battle. And that was exactly the case with Luffy's battle against Cracker, one of Big Mom's captain. See, the terrain of Whole Cake Island was confusing and so was Cracker's initial form that led to Luffy getting defeated. However, someone made out of food cannot fathom Luffy's gluttony. Tankman is born and Cracker is cracked into space thereafter. Now after Frankie and Senya Pink's fight, we didn't think we'd get a more manly bout in the series, but Oda did take us by surprise, pinning Katakuri against Luffy. Now Luffy did end up winning the fight, but let me remind you how many times a captain had to dip. If I remember correctly, it was more than once. And analyzing in detail the beatdown Luffy suffered at the hands of Katakuri, it's safe to reiterate the centuries-old saying he lost multiple battles but won the war. And more so due to the fact that many fans came out of that fight liking Katakuri more than Luffy, and that says something. Finally, the last fight in the Whole Cake Island arc, Big Mom. Okay, I have to brace in for this one. Was I the only person who got his ear harassed throughout the final episodes of the arc with Big Mom yelling Keiki in the subversion? And it was triggering to a point that I was averse to cake for a full year after that. But in any case, the fight was never supposed to be won. And even getting Sanji back was a big win, let alone assassinating Big Mom. Now the last defeats are just 3 consecutive losses against Kaido, first in Wano country and 2 consecutive ones in Oniganshima, which ultimately ended up in his heart getting stopped and him attaining Gear 5. So I guess Kaido is to thank for the Cartoon Network mania we've been enjoying for the past years. And one thing I can say is, even the haters kinda like the new wacky fights. I mean, at least I do. Now you gotta subscribe, cause I have dozens of videos coming in. Do it, or Big Mom's gonna have you as the next husband.